Listen with precision, because this is not comfort for a restless mind. It is direction for someone who has decided to stop living like a passenger. You speak of power given by the universe as if it were a distant gift, released by luck and denied by bad fortune. I tell you firmly, that power is already active in you this very instant, and the proof is the life you are living. Your reality today is the signature of the state you have been sustaining within. The question was never whether you have power. The question is, which state are you allowing to rule you inside, and how long will you keep feeding that same state as if it were destiny? You were trained to look outward and ask permission. You see a number, a delay, a comment, an expression on someone's face, and you decide, that's what I am. You call it realism. I call it bondage. Because whoever lets the outer define the inner hands the throne to any wind. And the universe, which responds to states, does not bow to your spoken desire. It bows to your silent conviction. You can repeat beautiful phrases and still carry inside the feeling of, it won't happen, and you will receive, it won't happen, with the coldness of a mirror that only reflects. The outer is not chasing you, it is confirming what you sustain when no one is watching. So I will deliver 5 principles to you, not as theory for you to collect, but as discipline for you to become. And I will speak so you do not need mystery, you need inner command. When I say manifest, I am not talking about waiting for the sky to open and luck to fall. I am talking about changing the state you sustain and letting the world inevitably reorganize itself to reflect that state. The first principle is to assume identity before you seek results. Most people try to achieve a result so they can then allow themselves to be someone different. And that is why they live postponed. They say, when I have it, I'll feel safe. When I make it, I'll feel capable. When I'm recognized, I'll feel valuable. That is putting your life on hold. You transform afterward, and the afterward never comes because the result is the child of the state, not the parent of the state. You do not wait for the mirror to change so you can choose a posture. You choose the posture and let the mirror learn to repeat it. Want a brutally honest test? Think of what you desire most. Now listen to the first sentence that appears inside you when no one is listening. Not the sentence you say to look confident, but the automatic, old, unpolished sentence. I'm not that kind of person. I always start and stop. That's for other people. I don't have the gift. My life is like this. That sentence is your address, and if you want to live somewhere else, you change the address. Identity is not your name, not your past, not your degree. Identity is the inner place from which you respond to the world, the invisible chair where your consciousness sits to interpret everything. Changing identity demands courage because you will abandon what is familiar. The familiar can be comfortable and at the same time be your favorite prison. There are people who have suffered for so long that they know how to suffer. They became experts at their own limitation. And when a chance for something new appears, the body resists. The mind tries to return to the old room. That is why I say, identity is a repeated decision. You choose to be before you see. You do not ask permission from the reflection. You position yourself at the source. Use an image. Imagine you are a commander on a ship's bridge. The sea outside may be calm or rough, but who gives direction is not the wave, it is the command. If you hand direction to each wave, you become a ship with no route. Identity is route. And route does not depend on the mood of the sea. You choose the destination and adjust the helm. Today, most people have the helm in the hands of chance, other people's opinions and fear. And the first principle is to reclaim the helm. I am the kind of person who lives this. Not I would like to, not I try. You assume it. Now be careful with a common mistake, confusing assumed identity with masking feelings. No. You can feel discomfort and still sustain a new identity. Discomfort is only the body complaining because you left a habit. If you assume you are disciplined, you do not wait for motivation. You create routine. If you assume you are respected, you do not tolerate humiliation as if it were destiny. You adjust boundaries. If you assume you are prosperous, you stop acting like someone who is always defending themselves and you begin acting like someone who manages resources and choices. You are not pretending, you are governing. At first, you will feel as if you are betraying your past, and that frees you when you understand. The past is not a law, it is a habit. It only rules you while you keep citing it as authority. It is like an old book on a shelf. It does not impose itself. You are the one who goes there and opens it every day. Stop opening it. You do not need to burn the book, you only need to stop consulting it to decide who you are. If you want a simple reminder, wear an invisible crown. Not to feel better than anyone, but to remember you govern your interior. When the mind comes with the old sentence, you touch that crown within and remember, I command. It is too simple for those who seek complication, and that is exactly why it works. Reality responds to what you sustain, not to what you complicate. Now I will lead you into the second principle, but before that I will give you a path of practice, because hearing without applying is only collecting words. If you want a direct material with exercises to train your inner state daily, to turn this decision into habit and habit into reality, the content indicated in the pinned comment serves as a training notebook. You do not need perfect belief to begin. You need practice. Take one part, apply it the same day, and watch your inner pattern reorganize over time. Use that as support to keep you on track when the mind tries to pull you outward. The second principle is to govern focus as one governs a lens. A well-adjusted lens brings clarity. A lens out of focus turns everything into blur, and you begin calling the blur the truth. Your focus is the lens of your reality. If you keep focus on lack, comparison, urgency, you see the whole world as lack, comparison, urgency. And then you ask why your life looks like that. Most people imagine victory for a few seconds and spend hours rehearsing what they fear. They call it prudence. I call it training for disaster. Focus is not tension. Focus is loyalty. Loyalty to the chosen state. And loyalty is proven in daily life, in what you feed, what you repeat, what you let slide. You do not need to fight every old thought. You need to stop treating it like an advisor. An old thought is habit noise. You observe it and decide, this is not the state I inhabit, and you return. Returning is power. Returning is discipline. Here is a simple exercise, the inner monologue. The voice that speaks inside you when no one is around is the mold of your tomorrow. If you treat yourself like someone late, you create delays. If you treat yourself like someone who must prove, you create endless tests. If you treat yourself like someone who always loses, you create losses with painful precision. So replace the command, not as theater, but as direction. When the mind says it will go wrong, you do not debate, you do not explain, you do not apologize for existing. You replace it firmly. I act from the right state. And you do that like adjusting the lens until the image becomes sharp. And do it calmly. The body will resist because it is used to the old film. The mind will try to drag you down with old phrases because it loves repetition. Do not be alarmed. Training a new focus is like taming a strong horse. You do not win by force. You win by firm repetition. Every time you realize the mind left the route, you return. No drama, no guilt. Guilt is a sophisticated way of staying in the same state. To govern focus, you also need to care for the diet of your attention. You do not put garbage in the body and demand health. So why do you put garbage in the mind and demand stability? If your day is fed by drama, comparison, fear, you are training the state that says, the world is threat and the mirror returns threat. Begin selecting what enters. Conversations, content, environments, even the jokes you repeat. Because repeated jokes become belief, and belief becomes scenery. I am not telling you to isolate. I am telling you to be sovereign. You can be in the middle of noise and still keep inner silence. Inner silence is your base. And when the world tries to provoke you, you respond from the base, not from the reflection. If you want a quick practice for unstable days, use the minute of return. When you notice you have been kidnapped by anxiety, stop for a minute, breathe, and give 3 commands within. I return to my state. I choose clarity. I act from what I already am. 1 minute, not to ask, to return. And the repeated return becomes a path. Paths become roads. Roads become destiny. The third principle is to read life symbolically, not literally. The literal is the trap of those who live on the surface. You see a delay and conclude, nothing ever happens for me. You hear a no and conclude, I'm not chosen. You meet a closed door and conclude, it wasn't meant for me. And with that, you sign an inner decree that the world as mirror is forced to reflect. Life is not giving you sentences. It is showing you portraits of your state, so you change the state. Learn to ask different questions. When something contradicts your desire, do not prophesy. Do not turn discomfort into a verdict. Ask, what part of my state is this revealing? A delay can reveal your habit of hurry and control. A silence can reveal your dependence on confirmation. An obstacle can reveal your fear of being too big for your own path. And when you see that, you stop being a victim of the sign and become a reader of the symbol. I will give you a common scene. You send a message and receive no reply. The literal says, I was ignored. The literal creates anxiety, creates pursuit, creates need. The symbolic says, here is my old state asking for food, the state that needs to be validated to feel safe. And then you choose differently. You return to the state of someone who is secure. You do not chase to humiliate yourself inwardly. You do not manufacture stories of rejection. You sustain a posture. I am chosen, I am respected, I am enough. And from that posture you act with dignity. The world feels that. The world responds to that. Symbolic reading also protects you from idolizing positive signs. A compliment does not define you. A good day does not define you. A high number does not define you. If you become dependent on signs, you become a hostage to fluctuations. And a hostage does not manifest. A hostage reacts. So sustain the state without needing the world's applause to continue. That is maturity. That is power. And pay attention to this. There is an interval between the new state and the new scene. That interval often feels strange. Things reorganize, people change roles, old situations reappear to be closed, decisions must be made. Many enter this interval and think, it got worse. It did not get worse. You are in the middle of the bridge. Whoever abandons the bridge returns to the same side and calls that proof it does not work. The symbol of discomfort is often the proof you left the old state and entered the adjustment process. When you decide to be respected, situations may appear where you need to say no. That feels uncomfortable for someone who always said yes. The literal says, I'm creating problems. The symbolic says, I'm creating a boundary. When you decide to be prosperous, opportunities appear to manage and also temptations to spend to relieve anxiety. The literal says, I'm weak. The symbolic says, I'm learning to be master of my impulse. Life gives you portraits, so you end habits, not so it punishes you. The fourth principle is to use imagination as a workshop, not as a courtroom. Most people use imagination to condemn themselves. They relive old scenes, rehearse humiliations, argue with enemies who do not exist, build catastrophic futures and call it preparation. It is not preparation, it is programming. You program what you fear, and the world returns what you trained. So from now on you will use imagination with intention. Choose a short scene that implies your desire is already a fact. Short, simple. A conversation where someone congratulates you. A moment where you feel in the body the lightness of having resolved what once crushed you. A common gesture of your new self. You opening your door in tranquility, paying naturally, waking with peace and purpose, looking in the mirror and recognizing the posture of someone who has won. And then enter that scene, not to force joy, but to feel reality. The correct feeling is not euphoria, it is naturalness. Because when something is yours within, it becomes natural, not anxious. And here is an instrument few have the courage to use because it requires responsibility, revision. If something happened and you did not like it, you do not need to carry it like a tattoo. You revise within and change the outcome, not to deny the outer fact, but to change the inner meaning that binds you. Because what binds you is not the event, it is the state you attach to it. A harsh word binds you for years if you attach I am not worthy. A mistake binds you for years if you attach I am incompetent. You revise and change the attachment, and when the attachment changes, the future changes course. Do it at the end of the day as silent discipline. You close your eyes and revise 3 moments. A moment where you fell into the old state and you rewrite it with dignity, as one teaches the mind a new ending. A moment where you held the new state and you reinforce it so the body learns it is safe to be like this. And a moment you want to live tomorrow and you plant the short scene with naturalness. That is a workshop. That is you shaping experience. And do not think imagination is only for getting things. It is for you to win yourself. You imagine your posture, your calm, your way of responding, your dignity. You rehearse inwardly your new behavior before the world asks for it. It is like an athlete who trains the movement when no one watches, so, in the real moment, the body obeys. You train your being, and when the moment arrives, you do not improvise from fear. You execute from state. If you want to make it even more real, use sensory details without exaggeration. Do not invent a huge film. Take one detail that is unmistakable. The weight of a key in your hand as you enter a place that represents victory. The sound of your own calm breathing after solving something that once crushed you. The simple glow of a screen showing stability. The smell of coffee on a morning when you wake without tightness in your chest. Detail creates inner reality. Inner reality creates coherence. Coherence creates manifestation. The 5th principle is to persist without anxiety, as one sustains a flame in the wind. Anxiety is the attempt to control time. It says, if it doesn't happen soon, it doesn't work. And in that sentence, you have already abandoned the state, because you want the event to prove you can trust. But the event is the consequence of trust, not its source. You sustain the state first, and time, which is not your enemy, organizes the rest. Persisting without anxiety also means learning to rest in the state. There is a kind of effort that is only fear in disguise. The person says they are doing everything, but inside they are terrified, and doing becomes an attempt to control the world. That does not sustain the state. It exposes doubt. What sustains is calm action. You do what is yours with dignity, and you let the rest organize itself. You do not need to watch the seed. You need to keep the soil. Persistence is not repeating phrases all day to convince yourself. Persistence is not returning to beg the visible. It is not falling to your knees before numbers, opinions, fluctuations, and scares. It is holding the posture when the scene still looks old. The world will try to seduce you with urgency. Look, nothing has changed. Look, you're falling behind. Look, you have no guarantee. And if you bite that hook, you return to the old state and call it realism. I call it disguised quitting. Treat neutral days as training in sovereignty. It is easy to sustain state when everything applauds. Hard is sustaining when everything is quiet, when nothing confirms, when no one validates. And it is exactly in the neutral that the state solidifies. Because you learn to be without depending on evidence. And when you reach that point, the mirror does not delay giving you evidence because it must respond to constancy. You persist when you choose to act like someone who already crossed the bridge, even if the ground has not yet changed texture. You do not need to deny what you see. You need to refuse to be defined by it. You use what you see as reading, not sentence. And when you persist like that, something inevitable happens. You begin noticing opportunities that were previously invisible because the old state kept you blind. You begin attracting people who match your new posture because your field has changed. You begin saying the right words without effort because the right state chooses the right words. And the world, which once looked like a wall, becomes a corridor with doors. If you want a simple way to consolidate this without getting lost, create a short, non-negotiable ritual. In the morning, before touching the phone, choose the state of the day in a clear sentence and say within as command, "Today, I act from my stable self." Then close your eyes for 30 seconds and see a minimal scene that proves that state. During the day, use the minute of return whenever you notice you were pulled into the old role. At night, revise one moment and rewrite it with dignity. You just turned something that seemed distant into daily practice, and daily practice is what makes state become identity. Keep a final image. You are not a beggar knocking on the door of the universe. You are a transmitter adjusting frequency. The world is a receiver. If you change the frequency with conviction and discipline, the receiver changes the response. And conviction here is not a high emotion. It is a low, constant decision without spectacle. And now I end with the exhortation you must hear without sugar. Stop begging for external change. Stop pleading for signs. Stop postponing your identity until someone or some circumstance authorizes you. From now on, you order in silence. You choose the state and sustain it, even when the world provokes you. You do not shout, you do not prove, you do not argue, you do not seek approval. You remain. And by remaining, you teach reality to obey, because the visible is not the boss, it is the mirror. If you want to make this practical consistently, go back to the pinned comment and use the indicated material as daily training. It is a concrete step to consolidate the new inner state, turn understanding into habit and habit into reality. And when the day tries to pull you into the old role, you will remember, I do not ask the world for changes. I change within, and the world follows. End of begging. Beginning of command. For centuries, humanity has sought signs in the sky, in cards, in numbers, in the words of others, believing that something outside themselves could announce the arrival of wealth, change, a miracle. But I tell you, nothing external is the true sign. The world is merely a mirror. The authentic sign manifests in the invisible, in the intimate, in the place only you can see. The common person looks around and asks, when will it happen? The awakened person looks within and declares, it has already happened. This is the difference between the servant of matter and the master of creation. Wealth does not emerge as a prize from outside, but as a natural consequence of an inner state assumed with conviction. When you change your state, the entire universe changes its behavior towards you. Life does not respond to what you say you want, but to what you are in silence. This is why some accumulate riches with no apparent effort, while others, despite all their hard work, remain in scarcity. For it is not sweat that creates, but consciousness. Sweat is merely the echo of belief in effort. Consciousness, indeed, is the source of all gold, all prosperity, and all transformation. And there is an instant, subtle, almost imperceptible, when the invisible begins to announce what is about to become visible. It is not a sign in the physical world, but a movement in the soul. It is when fear gives way to calm, when anxiety transforms into silent certainty, when desire ceases to be a plea and becomes anticipated gratitude. It is in this instant that a person is about to cross the veil between what is and what will be. If you learn to recognize these inner signs, you will understand that wealth does not come to you, it emerges from you. Outer gold is merely the reflection of inner gold that has awakened, and the true creator, the one who understands the law, does not chase prosperity. They emanate it. Because what is about to come is already within, and the sign of wealth is not an event, it is an awakening. The first sign that appears before wealth is detachment, but not forced detachment. Rather, it is one that occurs almost naturally, silently, as if something within you simply stopped reacting to fear. It is the moment when scarcity loses its power to affect you. You may still not have everything you desire, but you no longer feel despair over it. And it is at this instant, precisely when it seems you stopped caring, that energy begins to move in your direction. The common person confuses this state with indifference, but in truth it is mastery. You haven't detached from money, you have freed yourself from the idea that it is your master. When the mind calms and the heart no longer vibrates with urgency, you begin to align with what has always existed, invisible abundance. It is as if the universe, seeing that you no longer chase after what is missing, recognizes that you have finally understood the lesson and says, now you are ready to receive. As long as there is attachment, there is fear. And where there is fear, there is resistance. Fear is the denial of faith, and everything you fear becomes what you reinforce. Detachment, therefore, is not giving up. It is deep trust. It is surrendering to the certainty that the invisible has already provided everything even before you asked. Observe the moments when life seems to force you to release control. Sometimes it's a loss, an unexpected change, a delay, an apparent injustice. But all of this is merely the invisible hand of the law, teaching you to abandon dependence on the external world. Because as long as you believe money comes from people, from jobs, From opportunities, it will continue to elude you. But when you understand that it comes from the state you hold within yourself, life begins to serve you in silence. Money then flows effortlessly, like a river that finally finds its natural course. Detachment is the turning point. It is the bridge between the old self who begs and the new self who commands. No wealth is possible without this inner death, the death of anxiety, comparison, haste, the idea that you need to do something to be worthy. When a person lets go of the need to prove, they finally become a creator. They act without fear, speak with power, and rest in peace. This is the sign many ignore, because they expect something visible. But the invisible speaks in silence, and when your heart reaches this silence, know, wealth has already begun to approach. Not because you sought it, but because you finally stopped preventing it from coming. The second sign that arises before wealth is the silence of doubt. It is an almost mystical moment when the mind, previously noisy, begins to quiet down. That inner chatter, the fear of not succeeding, insecurity about the future, the constant need to control everything, begins to lose its grip. It's not that problems disappear, but something within you changes. You stop paying attention to the voice that insists on saying, "This is impossible," and begin to listen to another, softer, firmer one that says it is already done. This is the moment when consciousness takes command and the ego bows before the law. It is the precursor to manifestation, the point where the invisible begins to become matter. While doubt dominates, faith is merely an idea. But when silence takes the place of doubt, faith becomes substance. It is a state of inner quietude, a confidence that needs no proof, because it already recognizes what is to come as inevitable. The person who reaches this point is no longer shaken by delays or troubled by time. They understand that time is merely the distance between the invisible and the visible, and that the more peace there is within them, the faster the bridge forms. The mind, by nature, wants to understand and control, but the spirit merely knows. When knowing replaces wanting, reality begins to obey. This silence is not apathy. It is strength. It is the same kind of silence that precedes a great revelation. When you feel it, it is because something has already been decreed within you. The person rich in spirit does not need to prove their wealth. They simply live as one who already possesses it. And this living in certainty creates the magnetic field that attracts everything corresponding to it. The world then begins to align, even without rational explanations. The impossible rearranges itself, the improbable finds openings, and the invisible becomes tangible. The silence of doubt is the most overlooked sign, because the human mind associates movement with progress. But in the language of creation, it is the opposite. Excessive movement is resistance, silence is power. When you stop asking and begin to rest in certainty, the energy that was once dispersed in fear and anxiety concentrates, and this concentration is what gives form to reality. So, when your mind quiets down and you feel a strange peace, do not fight it. It is the spirit telling you, now it's my turn. This is the true sign that wealth is already coming, when your inner self no longer needs any proof to believe. The third sign that appears before wealth is when desire changes form. Initially, desire is born as lack. A person wants something because they feel they don't have it. They seek money because they believe it's missing, want freedom because they feel trapped, want abundance because they see scarcity around them. But when consciousness begins to awaken, this desire transforms. It ceases to be a cry of need and becomes an expression of one who already possesses. You no longer desire to fill a void, but to expand what you already feel exists within you. This is the point where the energy inverts. Desire stops being a plea and becomes creation. The person still trapped in desiring from lack lives in a cycle of frustration. They visualize, pray, work, but everything they do comes from the fear of not achieving. And fear, being a form of inverted faith, creates exactly what they fear. One who understands the law realizes that true power lies not in wanting, but in knowing. When you know something is yours in the invisible, there is no more effort, only alignment. It is when desire ceases to be a search and becomes an anticipated celebration. You feel gratitude as if you have already received, and this emotion is proof of the birth of a new state. Transformed desire does not cry out. It declares. It does not plead, it affirms. And this inner change is an unmistakable sign that wealth is near. Because the law responds to the predominant feeling, not to words, and when the feeling is one of possession, the universe reorganizes itself to confirm it. The person who understands this begins to act differently. They speak with serenity, decide with firmness, and walk with peace. They no longer desperately seek opportunities because they know they will come naturally. Their vibration becomes a silent command that attracts what belongs to them by divine right. This is the moment when many do not realize that the miracle has already begun. They think nothing has changed because there are no physical signs yet, but the true seed germinates in darkness. Transmuted desire is that seed, invisible yet alive. And when you maintain this feeling of anticipated gratitude, the visible world begins to bend before it. The right people appear, ideas arrive, money flows. All this not because you fought for it, but because you assumed it. Therefore, when your desire ceases to be a need and becomes a certainty, know that you have crossed the boundary between wanting and having. The invisible has already moved. Wealth is not coming. It has already begun to materialize, attracted by the consciousness of one who finally understood. To desire is not to ask, but to recognize what is already yours. The fourth sign that appears before wealth is the invisible movement of circumstances. It is when life begins to silently reorganize itself without you having to lift a finger. People drift away, paths close, opportunities seemingly disappear. And at first, everything seems to be going in the opposite direction to what you imagined. But this is the deception of the mind that has not yet learned to read the signs of the invisible. What appears to be confusion is merely the rearrangement of divine order. The universe is preparing the ground, removing what no longer serves, clearing space for the new state you have assumed. When consciousness changes, reality must reconfigure itself. It is inevitable. The external world is merely a reflection of the inner structure. Therefore, when you begin to sustain the state of wealth, life responds, not with immediate applause, but with subtle transformations. People who vibrated with scarcity drift away, doors that kept you confined close, routines that kept you small break apart. It is the old crumbling so that the new can be born. And if you understand this law, you will not be alarmed by the apparent chaos. Chaos is merely the birth of new reality. Many at this point give up. They interpret the changes as a sign of failure. They say nothing is working. But one who sees with the eyes of the spirit understands that the movement has already begun. The invisible is organizing the elements, attracting people, circumstances, and events that vibrate at the same frequency as your new state. Matter, obedient to consciousness, bows before what you are internally. It is the universal principle of correspondence. As above, so below. As within, so without. This invisible movement is the response to your silent decree. When you assume a new state, energy propagates in directions you cannot see. Perhaps a casual encounter, an idea in the dead of night, an opportunity arising from a seemingly trivial conversation. None of this is chance. It is the law responding. Every detail is a piece of the same design. Wealth does not enter your life through luck, but through alignment. Therefore, when everything begins to change, remain calm. Do not resist. Do not try to return to the old. Just observe and trust. The invisible is acting with mathematical precision. Life never misses its timing. It is people who despair too soon. The sign that wealth is near is not stability. It is movement. It is the wind changing direction. And when everything around you begins to move, know, what was invisible is becoming visible. Gold is emerging from the land of the invisible, and it comes in silence, but it comes with power. The fifth sign that appears before wealth is surrender. The instant when you finally stop fighting, controlling, trying to understand how things will happen. It is when your soul, tired of resisting, simply rests in certainty. This surrender is not giving up. It is faith in its purest form. It is when you understand deeply and almost unshakably that everything you desired has already been created in the invisible and that no human force can prevent its arrival. The common person calls this leaving it in God's hands. But the conscious creator understands. It is aligning with the law and allowing it to operate without interference. Up to this point, the mind tries to help, calculate, predict. But there comes a moment when you realize that the greatest obstacle is not the world. It is your own effort to try and control it. Surrender is the abandonment of the struggle and the total acceptance of the truth. The invisible is more real than the visible. When you reach this state, there is such a profound peace that it can be perplexing. You no longer feel haste, nor fear, nor the weight of waiting. It is as if everything has already been resolved, because, in truth, it has. The invisible merely awaits the necessary time to manifest in form. At this point, the energy stabilizes, the inner creator falls silent, and the universe responds. Opportunities begin to arise naturally, paths open effortlessly, and what once seemed distant approaches like an old acquaintance. This happens because resistance has disappeared. Faith has become so solid that reality has no choice but to obey. When a person rests in certainty, the material world bows before them. This surrender is the final point of the process. It is the instant when the seeker becomes a master. You no longer pray to receive, but to give thanks. You no longer imagine how it will be, because you already feel that it is. And this feeling is the vibrational signature of wealth. The invisible recognizes your command and hastens to respond. Nothing more needs to be done, only sustained. When you reach this state, there will be no doubt, no anxiety, no searching. There will be only a silent tranquility, accompanied by small, daily confirmations, encounters, coincidences, subtle movements, that will show you that the manifestation is already underway. This is the last sign before wealth. When your heart quiets and your mind rests, it is because the invisible has already been activated. The spiritual gold you assumed in thought begins to take form in matter. And then, without effort, without struggle, without noise, wealth appears, like something that was always there, just waiting for the moment you stopped doubting to be able to exist. Everything you have seen so far is not spiritual coincidence or poetic metaphor. These are immutable laws. Wealth, like all creation, is born in the invisible, grows in consciousness, and only then flourishes in the physical world. The error of the common person is to seek the reflection in the mirror before smiling. They want to see first and then believe, but one who understands the law knows that one must believe first and then see. Everything that appears in your life is merely the projection of the state you hold within yourself, and no external effort can change what has not yet been transformed internally. Therefore, do not seek signs outside yourself. The true sign lies in silence, in detachment, in the calm that replaces anxiety, in desire that becomes certainty, in circumstances that move, and in the surrender that ends all struggle. These are the secret announcements of approaching abundance. When you recognize them, do not hesitate. Stop begging for external changes and begin to command, in silence, that your reality bend to the state you have assumed, not with words, but with conviction. Life does not respond to what you ask, it obeys what you are. If you are wealth in consciousness, matter will bend to that truth. If you are faith, the impossible becomes inevitable. And if you are certainty, reality itself hastens to serve you. Abundance is not conquered. It is allowed. It has always been present, waiting for you to stop doubting. So I tell you, live now as one who already is. Think, speak, walk, and breathe as one who already possesses. Do not ask, declare. Do not wait, accept. The gold you seek is buried within your own being, and it only needs a silent gesture to emerge. From today forward, may you no longer look at the world as a spiritual beggar, but as the legitimate heir of creation. Because everything you see, touch, and experience is merely the shadow of what you already are. And when you remember this, wealth will no longer need to come. It will simply be. You walk through the world as if you are at the mercy of chance, but nothing that happens to you is the result of luck or misfortune. What you call destiny is merely the faithful reflection of the inner state you have silently sustained. Life does not respond to desperate cries, but to the silent decree of consciousness. This is why so many work hard, fight against the wind, rush from one place to another, and yet remain empty, because deep down, within themselves, they continue to carry the burden of scarcity. No matter how loudly you shout, if deep inside your voice is that of a beggar, the world will echo poverty. I tell you, the visible is always delayed. When you see the harvest, the seed was planted long before in the invisible soil of imagination. What is in your account today is just a snapshot of the state you allowed yourselves to inhabit yesterday. And as long as you insist on measuring life by what your eyes show you, you will remain chained to a cycle of repetitions. But if you have the audacity to reverse this order, to place the invisible above the apparent, then you will become masters of what once enslaved you. The law does not fail. It does not choose favorites. It simply gives back. If a person assumes misery, life multiplies signs of lack for them. If they assume abundance, the world bows and brings them paths that once seemed closed. This is what the prophets always said, but few understood. If you believe that you have already received, it will be so. The key was never to ask, but to assume. And when you understand this truth, you will see that you don't need intermediaries. You don't need to beg anyone. You don't need to wait for the tide to turn. The power has always been there, within you, waiting to be claimed. Therefore, today I call you to awaken, not as one who gives human advice, but as one who reminds you of an eternal truth. You are not servants of the world. You are its creators. Every sustained thought, every cultivated image, every word spoken with conviction is a decree that shapes reality. And when you understand that even money, that which so many venerate and fear, is no more than a reflection of the state you carry, then you will never see yourselves as poor again. The secret is not in chasing after it, but in declaring, I already have. Money is not born in a bank, does not sprout from a company, nor does it depend on anyone's generosity. It arises first and foremost from the state you sustain within yourself. When a person says, I don't have, even when surrounded by opportunities, they close doors that were already before them. A mind shaped by scarcity sees no way out, only barriers. But one who dares to assume abundance, even in barren terrain, finds unexpected sources. The difference has never been external, but in the silent state each one carries as their invisible habitat. This is why so many believe they need to chase things, accumulate contacts, multiply efforts. They think the cause of wealth is external, when in truth, everything begins in the invisible. Work, connections, projects, all are merely instruments that obey the inner decree. If you assume the consciousness of already possessing, every action aligns with that certainty. Life begins to conspire to confirm what you have established within. But if you assume lack, every movement becomes sabotage because the world simply returns the reflection of what you have accepted yourself to be. The three words that liberate are not magical. They are not a spell. They don't belong to a hidden ritual. They are the recognition of truth. I already have. This is the state that breaks the slavery of waiting. While you say, I need, you remain begging. When you say, I want, you still place yourself at a distance. But by inwardly affirming, I already have, you close the gap between desire and possession, because you place yourself in the only place where the law can act, the now. The future creates nothing. It is merely the repetition of the extended present. What you are now inevitably determines what will emerge. Look to the scriptures and you will see this principle always present. Manna was not accumulated for tomorrow. It was received in a state of daily trust. Abraham was called a father before he became one. Joseph saw the sun, moon, and stars bowing before him while he was still imprisoned. These accounts are not distant stories. They are maps of consciousness. They show that true possession never begins in the world, but within sustained imagination. When you assume the external world bends in obedience, like clay in the potter's hands, it takes discipline to inhabit this state, because everything around you will scream the opposite. The empty bank account, creditors knocking at the door, the judging eyes of others. Everything will try to convince you that you are mistaken. But I tell you, do not be deceived by the signs. Signs are delayed, like the light from a star that has already died. What you see is merely frozen past. The only living reality is the one you decide to assume now. And if now you silently declare, "I already have," that seed begins to germinate in the invisible. It is not about mechanical repetition, but about feeling the truth of these words. Imagine yourself as possessing, walk as one who already has, breathe as one who already enjoys, speak as one who has already triumphed. The universe does not argue with someone who places themselves in this state. It obeys. This is the first principle. Money, abundance, everything you seek does not come from outside. It comes from the state you carry. And this state is shaped by what you allow yourself to assume, not by what the world shows. Therefore, choose today. Continue to inhabit the state of one who waits, or inwardly clothe yourself in the state of one who already possesses. If you do the former, nothing will change. If you dare the latter, all of life will begin to bend to confirm your decision. Because the law does not fail, each person receives not what they desire, but what they assume themselves to be. You have been taught to trust your eyes more than your consciousness, and this is the second great error that imprisons humanity. From childhood, you learn to believe that what you see is the final truth, when in reality it is merely a delayed reflection of what has already been assumed. Visible life is like a photograph. It shows something that has already passed, never what is being born now. If you look at an empty account, you believe that is your destiny. If you see closed doors, you conclude there is no way out. But I tell you, do not let yourselves be hypnotized by appearances. Whoever kneels before facts remains a slave to the past. The true state is invisible and can only be sustained by faith, not faith as blind belief, but as the courage to assume what is not yet manifest. Scripture declares, "Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen." Observe, it is not about waiting for external signs to believe, but about carrying conviction even when everything seems contrary. This is the essence of the law. The world calls it madness, but it is the only form of conscious creation. Those who insist on waiting for external confirmation will never move forward, because confirmation only appears when the state has already been assumed. Imagine a sower. He casts the seed upon dry, seemingly empty earth. If he relies solely on sight, he will conclude that nothing has happened, because the soil has not transformed overnight. But one who trusts in the invisible knows that something has already begun. What eyes cannot see, time will reveal. So it is with money, with opportunities, with everything you desire. If you cling to what you see, you will kill the seed before it sprouts. But if you sustain the state in silence, the world will reorganize itself to manifest what you have assumed. This is the test of inner discipline, to remain steadfast when circumstances mock you. Your bank account may say no, friends may laugh, reality may seem unchangeable, but you are not here to obey the world. The world is here to obey you. It is at this moment that many give up, because they confuse delay with denial. They don't understand that the visible is always slow, and they surrender at the first contrary sign. But those who persist, those who do not bend to appearances, reap fruits that others will never experience. The secret is not to deny the facts, but to refuse to give them the power to dictate your truth. You can look at an empty wallet and still declare in silence, "I already have." You can walk through narrow streets and feel within yourselves the grandeur of one who already inhabits palaces. This attitude is not fantasy, it is law. External life has no choice but to mirror what you sustain within. This is why the great visionaries of history seem to live ahead of their time. They refused to be defined by what they saw and remained faithful to the invisible. Therefore, understand, abandoning evidence is more than a challenge. It is a call to the courage of living as creators. If you keep waiting for life to give you proof before you believe, you will die waiting. But if you dare to believe before you see, you will discover that the world bows before unshakable conviction. This is the second principle. Do not surrender to the visible, because the visible is delay, not truth. The truth lies in the state you choose to sustain, and only that state has the authority to shape your experience. You believe that merely desiring something for an instant should make the world bow. But the law is not moved by human anxiety, but by the persistence of one who firmly sustains a state until it becomes flesh. This is where many fail. They begin to assume abundance, but at the first difficulty they abandon that state and return to inhabit the old consciousness of lack. They don't understand that power lies not in the fleeting act of imagination, but in inner permanence. It's like lighting a flame and then immediately extinguishing it with the breath of doubt. The universe responds to what is stable, not to what is intermittent. What you sustain with constancy takes root and flourishes, while what you live by alternating never amounts to more than a shadow. Persisting in the state is like cultivating a garden. It's not enough to cast the seed once. You must water, protect, nourish it. The rebellious mind will try to distract you with contrary signs, will shout that nothing is happening, will accuse you of wasting time. But the conscious creator does not surrender to the voices of doubt. They walk as one who already possesses, even if no one around sees anything. It is in this discipline of persistence that you discover true freedom. Because no matter what the world says or doesn't say, you know that the seed has been planted and that the harvest is inevitable. People may laugh at you, they may point out the apparent contradiction between what you declare and what you live, but none of that has power against sustained certainty. Whoever persists, wins. Whoever gives up returns to the slavery of appearances. This is the difference between what manifests and what merely dreams. Imagine an artist shaping a sculpture. If with each strike they doubted the final form, they would never complete the work. The marble block would seem just a meaningless stone. But one who persists in the already completed vision within themselves, strike after strike, transforms the invisible into the visible. So it is with money, with opportunities, with every desire you carry. Persist in the state of possession, even if the world still shows stone, because it is in constancy that the invisible reveals itself. Remember, the world cannot resist a consciousness that does not waver. Life by law is compelled to bow before one who insists on firmly sustaining a state. If you remain oscillating between I have and I don't have, the reflection will be chaos and instability. But if you decide once and for all to inhabit I already have and never leave it, then the universe has no choice but to confirm. This is the third principle, inner persistence. It is not about crying out in despair, but about inhabiting the state of possession until it becomes as natural as breathing. One who lives this way has already won, because they have understood that life is not shaped by moments of faith, but by states maintained with discipline. Constancy is the seal of creation, and whoever learns to sustain the state never again becomes a slave to appearance, because they already know that the invisible always, without exception, becomes visible. Many still don't understand the weight of silence. They think creation requires shouts, pleas, or lengthy explanations to the world. But the law does not respond to noisy clamor, but to the silent authority of one who has already decided within themselves. It is in silence that consciousness strengthens, because silence is the field where there is no interference, where certainty can germinate without being suffocated by the noise of opinions and doubts. When you talk too much about your desires, you almost always do so from a place of insecurity, seeking to convince others of what you have not yet assumed within yourselves. And by exposing the sacred in the form of doubt, you allow the incredulous eyes of others to undermine the faith that was still taking root. Keep the vision to yourselves until it is mature. Do not beg for approval. Do not expect others to confirm what only you have received as a seed. If you must speak, speak with authority, not as one who asks, but as one who affirms. Let every word pronounced be an extension of inner conviction, for the mouth reveals what the heart has already accepted, and when the mouth becomes an instrument of certainty, even the invisible begins to align itself to manifest what has been decreed. But understand, silence is not empty. It is full of decision. When you are silent to the world but sustain within yourselves the image of already possessing, the entire universe hears that decree. Silence imbued with faith speaks louder than any discourse. It is like breathing. It does not need to be announced to be real. So too is inner possession. It requires no fanfare because it is already a consummated fact in consciousness. Observe how many fail precisely at this point. Today they assume in silence, but tomorrow they rush to tell others, and when they don't receive immediate confirmation, doubt returns to erode their conviction. If they had kept it within themselves, if they had protected the state as one protects a flame in the wind, they would have seen the invisible materialize. But by exposing what was still being born, they allowed it to be crushed by the disbelief of others. Learn the discipline of speaking little and creating much. Learn to let the world be surprised when the invisible becomes visible. Because when you keep the secret, you give no room for doubt. The only voice that echoes is that of certainty. And that voice, even in silence, is heard by the law. This is the fourth principle, the power of silence. It is not noise that moves mountains, but the silent conviction that refuses to negotiate with appearances. One who masters silence masters creation. One who speaks in excess hands over the gold of consciousness to the disbelief of the world. Therefore, choose silence filled with faith, and you will see how the world, without warning, will begin to move in the direction of what you have already decreed within yourselves. You have often heard of gratitude, but almost always confused it with a later feeling, a thank you after something has already manifested. This is the gratitude of ordinary people who give thanks when the table is already set, when the door has already been opened, when the harvest has already become visible. But I tell you, true gratitude does not begin afterward, it begins before. It is the invisible proof of faith. One who gives thanks in advance declares, without words, that they already possess what their eyes do not yet show. Observe the words of Jesus. Father, I thank you that you have heard me. It was not a thank you after the miracle, but before it. This is the secret of anticipatory gratitude. It does not ask, it confirms. It does not implore, it recognizes. By giving thanks for the invisible as if it were already a consummated fact, you seal your inner state and prevent doubt from finding space to erode your conviction. Anticipatory gratitude is like a key that closes the door to wavering and keeps consciousness in the place of possession. Imagine someone who plants a seed. They don't return every day to unearth the soil and check if something has sprouted. They water, trust, and already give thanks for the future harvest because they know that life will take care of its part. So it is with your desires. If you only give thanks after seeing, it is because you have not truly believed yet. But if you give thanks before, if you walk with a light heart as one who already possesses, then the invisible rushes to deliver to you the reflection of what you have already assumed. This gratitude is not a superficial emotion. It's not just a thank you said casually. It is a state of certainty. It is waking up in the morning and, even before looking at your circumstances, feeling within yourself the joy of one who has already achieved. It is paying a bill, and instead of grumbling about the money leaving, smiling as one who knows the source is inexhaustible. It is looking to the future without fear, because possession is already being lived in the present. This attitude changes everything, because life has no choice but to reflect the consciousness that remains unshakable. One who lives in this spirit realizes that gratitude is more than an attitude, it is law. Because giving thanks in advance is to assume, and to assume is to create. There is no other way. When you say thank you beforehand, the universe understands that it is already done and organizes circumstances to confirm the word. One who does this never remains in lack, because they have already closed the cycle of creation within themselves. This is the fifth principle, anticipatory gratitude. It seals the state, strengthens faith, and transforms the invisible into the inevitable. One who learns to give thanks beforehand never begs again, because they understand that nothing needs to be asked for, only recognized. And upon recognizing, the reflection inevitably appears. Therefore, do not wait for proof to give thanks. Give thanks as if it already were, and you will see that it already is. So listen closely. Everything you have heard is not distant theory, nor abstract philosophy. It is living law, as firm as the gravity that keeps your feet on the ground. You have learned that money, abundance, everything you seek does not come from outside, but is born from the state you silently sustain. You have learned that you must not kneel before appearances, because the visible is always delayed, merely an echo of what has already been assumed. You have seen that it is not enough to desire for moments. You must persist until the state becomes natural, because life responds to constancy, not oscillation. You have understood the power of silence, which protects the sacred from the doubts of others and gives faith a pure space to flourish. And you have discovered that anticipatory gratitude is the final seal of creation, the inner proof that the invisible is already present possession. Now, merely listening is not enough. What I tell you demands decision. You can leave here and return to the old habit of begging for signs, of living as victims, of waiting for the world to give you what it can never give. Or you can, at this very moment, claim the inheritance that already belongs to you. Money, health, love, all of this does not need to be won through the desperate sweat of struggle, but recognized in the silence of consciousness. Say within yourselves, not as a plea, but as a decree, I already have. Inhabit these words, wear them like a second skin. Let them become the natural breath of every moment. And then you will see the world, step by step, bend to confirm what has already been decided within. Stop living like orphans, begging for crumbs from a universe that in truth belongs to you. You are creators, children of the law, heirs of the promise. Everything you assume with conviction is already yours. Therefore, choose today to remain in the slavery of doubt or to live in the freedom of certainty. I tell you with authority, stop imploring the world to change. Command in silence and conviction, and the world will obey. Because nothing, absolutely nothing, can resist the state assumed with faith. He who has ears, let him hear, and he who has courage, let him practice. Because life is already ready to return to you, unfailingly, that which you dare to be.